What up, though, Detroit? Hello, world, and welcome to another episode of Detroit Bicycle, where we are all about the love, benefits, art, culture, and the people we meet on bikes from the Detroit area and beyond. Once again, we're on the famous stage of PJ's Lager House.
Yeah, we're out here, man.
Thank you again, PJ, for allowing us the opportunity to record our podcast here. Bruno, as always, how you doing?
I'm real good, man. How you doing, guys?
Good. And on the board, we've got sounds of Mr. Bobby Brown.
What's up, people?
How goes it?
Everything
What's
is
up,
well.
Bobby?
Everything is well. How about you?
You good?
Oh, yes, sir.
How's the week been?
Sir. Long.
Been a lot going on, man.
Yeah.
So what have you been into these last few
You
days
know,
since recording?
I've had the summer off, and I took a couple of part-time jobs. I took one with the health department.
Nice.
Doing being a Safe Lanes ambassador for the city.
Cool.
And really enjoying that work because I get around. I get to see all the city on two wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And I work at a bike shop now.
Nice.
So you know the deal.
Right.
You know, it's not really about the bread sometimes. It is about the parts.
It is.
You know, sometimes,
Right.
sometimes it's about the parts.
We'll work for parts.
Right.
Yeah.
Bobby?
Hung out at Mopop. My girl, she was selling some of the art. Go check out Bringing the Happy, y'all.
Bringing the happy.
Bringing the Happy, yes, on the Instagrams and everything. But seen a few acts. That was cool. Shout out to Metropolis, who was
Doing that bike
doing
parking.
the bike parking.
Yeah.
Yes. They held it down for me.
That's what's up.
And that was cool. It was warm, but it was nice out, off the water, just chilling.
Right.
Getting ready for school to begin. It's going to be crazy this year.
Yeah,
so.
those back-to-school ads are killing me, man.
Yeah. Already started.
This already started.
As soon as the
It's
fourth is over, that's
Right.
right. Swing right into it. Swing right into it. What about you, Henry?
Oh, man, my weekends generally during the summertime is taking up primarily doing a lot of more riding, of course, but a touring aspect out of wheelhouse. So these past few weekends I had shifts. Actually, I did a double Saturday and worked Sunday. And
What kind of tours you gave?
let's see. I do my normal Belle Isle. And
Okay.
I've been assisting on this recent weekend was a Detroit sports tour.
Okay.
So locations and spots
Like
of
Olympia and stuff.
Yep,
right.
arenas and some little sports history around the city. And also I did a music tour, which highlights a lot of the locations and venues of old Detroit that really put us on the map musically. So on today's show, we definitely try to uplift and educate people, enlighten as well. Today's show is about bike law specifically. Today we have in the house today Mr. Bryan Waldman. He will be joining us, but we figured we'd switch things up a little bit before we get started and bring our Three Things segment up early because, discussing this topic, we figured out, there's stuff that keeps us safe, stuff that we need to know when we're on the streets. But out of those rules and regulations and laws that we do know, what are some of the dumbest ones that we've come across? Before we get into the serious, straight up, informative, let's get into the, can you believe that was actually on the books? So I did some searching. We all did a little research. And, there are some locally that are questionable. But I kind of stepped out state guidelines and took it out of state and found a couple that I thought were really odd. To start us off, if you gentlemen don't mind.
No, go ahead, man.
All right, thanks. The first one I thought that was kind of funny on many behalves is out of Connecticut. There's actually a law in the books that said it is forbidden to ride a bicycle faster than 65 miles per hour. So I know people think
I would
I'm
want
fast.
that ticket. I would frame that
Yeah.
ticket.
Right. That'll be an accomplishment. That's what I was going to say. Generally, you know, the tryhards get to about 25 to 30-ish.
Right.
And, you know, that's pretty much the limit. I think historically speaking, across the country, actually across the world, only 2 people have achieved that unassisted. So to make a law in Connecticut,
Yeah.
I thought was pretty stupid.
Yeah, most people aren't getting
They got
that.
free time.
Yeah.
They had free time in
Your
Connecticut.
ticket for that would be the trophy.
Right, it would be.
You won.
Yep.
You
Right.
survived going
Right.
6
There's actually a
5.
trophy for that. So what you got, Bobby? What you dig up?
Mine went to Galesburg, Illinois, and no rider of a bicycle shall remove both hands from the handlebars or feet from the pedals or practice any acrobatic or fancy riding on the street.
I'm always fancy when I ride.
What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
Right.
I would, yes. When I leave the house, I'm getting a ticket. just hand it to me as soon as I hit the door, because
No fancy
riding in Galesburg.
No fancy riding
Illinois.
in Galesburg,
yeah,
Illinois.
no fancy riding.
That's
So,
crazy.
Hey, don't. We always say don't be sweet.
Don't
you know?
be sweet. Don't be
but
sweet.
in Galesburg, don't be fancy.
All right, so hey, I got to
Bruno?
be honest. I picked one that's local. It's a state law, and it just actually changed recently, where they added an additional. They added bicycle safety and awareness to the driver education classes, and they added 1 hour, and they added the bicycles to the hour with pedestrians and public transit
Right.
and railroads and everything else. And I thought, well, you know, if you're going to crowd them all together, that's great, because we're talking about one transit, you know, a road system that includes
Sure.
all of them.
Right.
But then to make driving, you know, all but 4% of the instruction time,
Right.
you know, like that seemed
It's
disproportional.
lacking.
Right.
For sure.
And we don't need any, in my opinion, we don't need any more. We need less distracted or uninformed drivers
Indeed.
right now.
For sure.
I think that might
Yes.
be
Yep.
be good for
Yes.
I
cyclists.
agree.
So,
So-
but I do like the fanciness. I do. I'm kind of.
Hey, you
I'm
know.
gonna have to change a couple of my outfits.
So our special guest today, Bryan, do you have any laws or rules for cyclists that you thought were pretty silly?
There's a number of cities in the state of Michigan that still have this law on the books, and I think probably the most extreme example is this small town called Leslie, Michigan, that is not far out of Lansing.
Okay.
A lot of bike clubs in Lansing will do their group rides through Leslie, and they have a law that's real similar to a lot of cities, and it says that everyone riding a bicycle through the city or in the city must stop and register their bicycle with the chief of police. And, you know, you can just imagine, take a slow roll.
Sure.
You drive through the city, everybody stops, knocks on the
man.
door and says, we're here to register our bikes with the chief of police or the Palmer Park ride.
Sure.
I don't think you're going to be real welcome, but that's on the books.
Wow.
And not only in Leslie, but in a lot of cities.
Wow.
Leslie, I think, may be the only one that calls for the chief of police as opposed to just the police
Sure.
department. But I think that's one of the more silly laws
No
on the books.
kidding.
Hey, it's some wild stuff out here. You never know.
I'm kind of hoping some of those aren't enforced.
Yeah.
You know, I'm hoping that some of that's not enforced in Leslie.
Right, because if we did go up, there'd be a lot of manpower hours used to
Right.
Yeah.
write
They'd
citations
run out of
for-
stickers.
Right,
Yeah.
overtime.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that might be for revenue purposes
Oh,
or
yeah.
something.
I'm guessing they don't enforce the 65 mile per hour law. very
Yeah, they
much.
probably don't in Connecticut either. Right?
No.
Nice. So that's our early segment of the three things. And again, that leads us into our guest for this recording, Mr. Bryan Waldman. He is the curator of a booklet I'm sure you've seen at many bike shops, many and all bicycle events, and probably bicycle showcases as well. This is the writer of the Legal Handbook for Michigan Cyclists. Bryan, thanks for joining us, and welcome to Detroit Bicycle.
Thanks for being here, guys. This is your 15th episode, right?
Yeah,
All right,
we're stacking them up.
So
around
it's
there.
good to know that I'm your 15th choice,
no,
or who knows? Maybe some, maybe
16.
depending on how many.
16,
Right,
okay.
right, and who knows
Hey,
how
the
many.
Beatles
no's you
weren't
got,
on
so-
cars on what was the Beatles were on the
Johnny Carson,
no, before it was Johnny Carson. What was it? What were the
the
Beatles?
late night.
Yeah, it was the late night show at the time they came on.
Oh man,
They
before
were
my
famous for
time.
that shit. Me too.
Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan, right? Yeah, they were
Something like that.
they weren't
Yeah,
the first
probably was.
first people on the Ed Sullivan show.
No, I appreciate it.
Thank you
I've
for
listened to
coming.
a number of your podcasts, and I think it's just a fantastic show. If you couldn't have been motivated by the last podcast you guys did, Emily, I mean, the
Oh,
energy
yeah.
she has,
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
right.
amazing
yes.
person, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she held Detroit down when there was nobody
Yeah,
holding it down.
yeah.
Right.
Nobody. So, Bryan, just to give our listeners a little heads up and just some of your accomplishments and credibility, you are the president and partner of your firm,
Sinas Dramis Law Firm. It's a tough one, right?
Dramis
Yeah.
Law Firm, yes. You specialize in personal injury litigation, is that correct?
That's correct.
There's been several accomplishments of you since you started practicing in 92, is that about right?
Right, 92, Wayne State.
Nice. So you've been really recognized and of your accomplishments of being even you're the president of the Michigan Trial Lawyers Association from 2003 to 2004. Then in 2009 to between 2008 and 2009, you were chairman of the Michigan Civil Service
Civil Service
Association.
Commission, yeah.
And you were also recognized as one of the best lawyers in America, actually. True.
That some publications have said that.
Okay, good. So, we've got a good source to keep us informed. So, moving on to your cycling aspect, you have been an avid cyclist for several years, 20 plus years or more.
Yeah, probably getting close to 30 years.
Getting
Yeah.
close to 30 years now. You are the member and chairman of the advocacy committee for the League of Michigan Bicyclists.
I am, yeah.
And we work together in that organization, which is pretty cool.
It's great having you on the board, Henry.
We appreciate it. I appreciate it. And you're also a member of several other bike groups, Michigan Mountain Bike Association,
League of Michigan Bicyclists,
Michigan Bicyclists,
League of American Bicyclists, yeah.
USA Cycling.
Yeah.
So just to lay the groundwork for you people, this is someone who not only lives a life, but the practice is also available to help us as well as cyclists are concerned. And just to throw it out there, you have done a lot of road racing, mountain bike racing, you're racing some cyclocross and criterium as well. So you're out there and you really know the feeling of a cyclist on the road.
I think so. I've raced, but mostly I just like riding with my friends. I think like most people, you realize you show up at a race, most of the time you're going to have a pretty bad time unless you win. Only one guy walks away happy, right? But if you go out and ride with your friends, you're almost for sure going to have a good time.
Indeed.
That's true.
So, talking about your legal handbook for Michigan Cyclists, why don't you take us back to when you started, why you started it, and your objective of doing such a handbook?
It goes back a long way, and so I'm not really sure, Henry, I know what the objective was. I honestly can't remember, how it all got started, but, I've always, since I started practicing law, I've been a person who rides bikes. Mm-hmm. And so I've always represented a lot of cyclists, and I've always been part of that dynamic where you get people shouting at you to do something when they
Sure.
don't know what the law is from their car window, or maybe a police officer who pulls you or a friend over.
All experienced that, yep.
And I just thought, you know what, there needs to be some knowledge. And I'm not critical of everybody who doesn't know the law. You know, we just talked about how, you know, Bruno mentioned in driver's ed, we don't teach people about bicycles.
Right.
Police have to know so many laws. They've got to know criminal procedure. They've got to know laws relating to much more serious crimes than riding a bicycle.
Sure.
And so, you know, we got to have some leniency on them for maybe not knowing every law that has to do with a bicycle. So what can I do to help educate people? And so I wrote the first version of this, a legal handbook for Michigan Cyclists, and a friend of mine who actually is a insulator, works construction, said to me, you know what, this book's great, but you need it when you're on the road. You need it in a pocket size. So then we started putting out the pocket size version, and that seemed to be what people wanted until more recently, and now people are actually, I think, reading the whole book and asking for copies of the big one.
They don't need the pocket cliff notes.
Well, a lot of people want the pocket cliff notes, and I'm amazed. I go into bike shops, and a mechanic will come out, and they'll see me, and they'll pull their little pocket version out of their back pocket and say, I carry it with me just in case I get stopped. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So it's really there to be a resource for whoever needs it, because no one else was providing that resource, and we've had a great response with it.
Now, being an advocate, you know, you are able to get this information to a lot of different people's hands. So you said the response from a lot of the bicycle shops and mechanics are to have it, a smaller copy available for them. Have you, what other networks have you used to distribute this that people have found appreciation for?
But, you know, primarily it's been through the bike shops. There's been a lot of bike events, as you mentioned, that we go to where we make them available. If clubs, you know, a lot of clubs will ask me to come speak about the laws, I'll make the books available through clubs. And then we now, you know, have it so that there's an online digital version. You can download it from our website, too.
Now, I've noticed it's actually pretty extensive. You do go through, you know, a lot of different topics. Let's just, you know, look at a couple and break a few down.
Sure.
The first segment would be the rules of the road for Michigan cyclists. Now, as of late, with all the popularity of cycling, there's been a lot more discussion of what rules cyclists are to abide by. Just briefly, take us through that. I mean, being traveling on the road, we are traffic, but not vehicles.
Right. And Michigan is unique in that sense. So
Sure.
in most states, bicycles are considered vehicles. In Michigan, in our motor vehicle code, we have a definition of a vehicle, and that does not include things that are powered by humans. And for that reason, bicycles are not vehicles. It's a unique mode of transportation. Bicycle is separately defined in the motor vehicle code. But then we have a section in the motor vehicle code that says bicycles enjoy all the rights and privileges of vehicles, but they also have to follow all the same laws. And people think it ends there. But people often think it ends there, but it doesn't, because there's additional laws that apply specifically to bicycles.
I think that's where the information kind of gets real cloudy or even lost, is that, you know, there is a difference between the two. And like you were saying, Bruno, the education is what is
Right.
pretty...
We need people to know what are the rights and responsibilities for each participant in the transportation community.
Exactly.
Right. So everyone knows where everyone's role is and where the boundaries are.
I agree, you know, and you know, for example, a couple weeks, and everybody's got a million examples, and that's what I see when I go out and talk to people. Oh, some guy buzzed me here, or somebody, you know, someone screamed, you know, last week at me when I was riding with a buddy, you know, single file, and we were riding two abreast, and you're allowed to ride two abreast.
You just want to pull out the book and be like, hey, right here.
But it's like, hey, they don't know. I mean,
They don't know.
why they think they need to verbalize what they don't know, but They don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot more popular in society than you'd imagine. Verbalizing what you don't know.
Is there any effort on your behalf, as an advocate and as an attorney, to get any of this information pushed through the state education for driver's training?
As the advocacy chair for the League of Michigan Bicyclists, I was involved in a lot of I testified in front of the Senate subcommittee regarding the driver's education bill. I met with a number of people who were key in getting us the 1 hour that we do have.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the initial proposal was that it was 3 hours.
Sure.
I agree with Bruno. It is a silly law that we dedicate so much time to just motor vehicles, and by the way, a motorcycle is also not a motor vehicle under Michigan law. It's a vehicle, but not a motor vehicle. And then we have 1 hour to motorcycles, pedestrians, bicycles,
motorcycles is even included
people in wheelchairs, and so
e-bikes.
But here's the challenge with that is the Secretary of State says, hey, we privatized, when I took driver's education, we went to the local high school.
Oh, yeah, you took it at school.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yeah, you took it the PSL.
And so now people pay for their driver's education. And so it's a module or a program that's based on far more hours than our state law says it has to be, and it all has to do with profits.
Right.
So they have to teach this program that I think has something like 45 or 50 hours.
I read that recently. 45 hours of instruction. But the class is only 30 hours long.
But the class is 30 or 35 hours.
Right.
So the Secretary of State is saying, well, we don't have many hours to give. We're already and that's a minimum. So so the instructor or the whoever is providing the class can say, well, our class is going to be 45. Well, what class are you going to take? Are you going to take the class that gives you your driving certificate after 30 hours, or the one that makes you go for 50 and makes you pay for 50? And so it's a real issue. And until we correct the bigger issue, which is we got people driving who don't know how to drive because they haven't had a proper driver's education class.
There's that.
Yes.
Really, as cyclists, we look at motorists and we think they're terrible motorists to cyclists. They're terrible to everybody. Watch people drive. They're bad.
Right. We just happen to notice it more when we're on our bikes.
Right. The risks are bigger, and we see more when we're on bikes.
Now, is there any... I was reading a little bit about the responsibility of municipal roads and keeping them clean, and what are our rights as cyclists on these roads.
The law is that whatever government agency is responsible for a roadway has to keep that road so that it's reasonably safe and convenient for public travel. And that includes bicycles. It includes pedestrians. It includes motorcycles. And so under the law, that's their obligation. Now, the problem is who enforces that obligation. And
it's
that's where the real rub. Right.
Yeah, they're checking them themselves.
And really, but it is a tool. And so, I've had a lot of bike clubs say to me, hey, we had some people go down in a group ride because the road is just terrible, or the shoulder just, the edge of the road deteriorates, or there are potholes. And so once you write to a government agency, say it's, the Wayne County Road Commission, and say, it's your obligation to maintain Michigan Avenue so that it's reasonably safe and convenient for public travel. There's 3 huge potholes at the corner of Trumbull and Michigan.
Right.
Well, they've got an obligation to fix that. And believe it or not, if you do that, you will see some action, because they realize once that happens, if someone gets hurt or someone's car is damaged or their bicycle's damaged, they're responsible for that damage once they're on notice.
Right.
And I know that there's an app that the state of Michigan has.
I think Detroit adopted one too.
Detroit mich.gov or something, and I can't remember the beginning of it, but it's a app for reporting these things. So if you're in the city and you see a pothole or something, you can take a picture of it and report it to the city.
Things like that.
Street lights that are out.
Right.
So maybe we'll get that to you.
We'll definitely put
in the
that
show notes.
Yes.
Now, there's one thing that I just want to interject as well. You've created this handbook representing the state law. However, each city has its own.
Each city has its
addendum
own code or ordinances. So the state law says that cities can regulate traffic in their own jurisdiction as long as it doesn't conflict with state law.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of cities have specific bicycle regulations. They tend to be those types of regulations that we talked about that nobody enforces.
Sure.
Because the state law pretty much covers it.
Right.
You know, a lot of the old bicycle laws that have been adopted by cities or townships, no one's paying attention to those.
And I'm just making a large assumption, probably answering my question myself, but it's you have to be up to breast on all of those added laws or even those that are pending. And
you do, which becomes difficult if you're someone who rides bikes through city or township lines. The ones that most people would need to be aware of that are still enforced have to do with where you can be on the sidewalk, where you need to be in the street.
Mm-hmm.
And as a general rule, if you're riding in a downtown area, you probably don't want to be on the sidewalk anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really too much want to be on the sidewalk anywhere.
Anywhere
That's
I'm
not
riding.
for you.
No, right.
That's for pedestrians. That's their place.
Yeah.
So,
All right, moving on to another section I think is pretty exciting going on is the e-bike revolution currently.
Yeah, so e-bikes, I mean, they get, mixed reviews, although I think you saw, Henry, I'm a recent e-bike owner, and I kind of was lukewarm on them, and I like to commute to work by bicycle. But riding an e-bike to work, I'm a believer now.
Okay.
I mean, it is a blast. I mean, you
don't show up sweaty.
You don't show up sweaty.
Keeps you
I mean, you
fresh,
can if you want to go 28,
Right.
you're breaking a sweat. But I can go 23 without breaking a sweat and just take a seat at my desk, and it's fantastic. I love it.
Now, the law's broken down to classify e-bikes into
Three classes.
3 different classes. I know the first one is just assist with the power being provided mostly by the rider.
Right, so class 1, you need to pedal the bike to engage the engine, and when you pedal it, the motor will shut off, and I want to say it's like at 20 miles an hour.
Okay.
And class 2, you can control the motor
Throttle.
with a throttle or a button,
Okay.
and again, it shuts off at 20 miles an hour. Class 3, which is what I've got, and I love it.
You can only see the smile right now. The cheese.
You pedal, and it cuts off at 28, and it doesn't take a whole lot of work to get up to about 25.
28.
It's a lot of fun. And then the law defines where you can ride those things. And the important thing for people to know is they're really not allowed on dirt or mountain bike trails, because the mountain bike community in Michigan really did not want that to happen. They were scared about the damage it would do to the trails.
Sure.
And really, this is where the Michigan bicycle community kind of rallied, because this was a potential issue that was going to divide when we
The
passed.
community was going to get divided.
So this was a new law that just took effect in Michigan, and within the last 7 months, this law took effect. And everyone saw it on the horizon. Other states had e-bike laws. And one of the things that you realize when you do advocacy work is the worst thing that can happen is when you divide the group into factions.
Sure.
And the mountain bikers were opposed to e-bikes because they were concerned they were going to destroy the trails. And everyone kind of got together and we reached a compromise. And so if an agency or an entity that runs a mountain bike trail says that they want to allow e-bikes, they can allow them. But the presumption is if you're riding an e-bike, don't take it on an off-road trail.
Unless you are aware that particular entity is specifically
accepting
Going to allow it.
of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's a nice compromise.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it seems to be working. People are...
As far as I know, everything's working great. I heard of an incident where, I won't mention the trail this happened on, but they installed a device that actually destroyed the electric motor if someone tried to do it, and someone tried to do it, and they got a little
what?
upset when their motor kind of fried out on the spot.
Oh.
was a long ride home, apparently.
Wow, the technology is real.
All right.
Yeah.
But that's the only incident I've heard of.
Wow.
That's
Self-enforced.
Yeah.
That's next
Yeah,
level
yeah,
right
it
there.
is.
Yeah,
It is.
that's a
Hey, be careful out there on your e-bike.
Right.
Step your
Game
bike
up.
trails.
Yeah, know where you're going.
right.
That's for sure. All right, moving forward. I don't think we should be going through all of this, but there's a couple
No,
of
man, just go to
Yeah.
the fun stuff.
the highlights,
Yeah.
that I really enjoyed.
We can talk about whatever you want. Laws, the laws are there. They're boring.
Hey, what's on the? Tell us what you want to tell us.
Well, I mean, I'd like to talk. I mean, I talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, but we've got new laws that I think it's important that
I
people
think we
understand,
want to
including
address
e-bikes.
the new laws.
And then, I think where we're going is a bike community is important. What is it that we want in the future, and what laws are going to be best to help us in the
sure, and
future?
that
What
actually,
changes do we want?
because I was curious about what laws are there to protect
Yeah.
us as cyclists too. So
Well, to protect us, I mean, as you know, Michigan was one of the very last states to adopt what is called a safe passing law. And in a number of cities got upset that there was not a statewide law to protect cyclists.
sure,
And particularly safe passing. Most of the people I represent in cases where they've been injured are people in Michigan that have been struck from behind. In certain cities like Chicago, Seattle, my guess is probably most of the cases are people opening the door into a cyclist.
Yeah, getting doored is not.
That's not fun.
That is the least
Right.
pleasant way to get hit.
But in
I
Michigan, I think most of the time it's someone getting hit from behind. There's certainly a large number of people making left-hand turns in front of bicycles or
sure.
right-hand turns in front of bicycles. But we were really slow to the game, and the really serious injuries over the years have been people struck from behind, and deaths have occurred from people being
So
struck
the
from behind.
safe passage law
helps.
dedicates 3 feet from the edge of the
Minimum.
cyclist minimum.
Yes.
From the edge of the cyclist to the edge of the car. So that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Safe passage.
Absolutely. And so most states have a law that says that. And in Michigan, you had a lot of cities getting really upset that our state lawmakers couldn't get their act together and couldn't pass this law. And so Grand Rapids, I think, was the first, and they said, hey, we're going to make it 5 feet. 3
Oh,
feet
wow,
doesn't
nice.
seem that safe.
Right.
And then there were other cities that jumped on board, Ann Arbor, Kalamazoo, and they passed this 5-foot safe passing law. And then finally, Michigan, I think there were only 5 states in the country that didn't have a safe passing law.
Jeez.
And I hesitate to call Michigan a safe passing law. It's a bicycle passing law, but it's 3 feet with this little exception that if it's not practicable to give a bicycle 3 feet, you have to pass at a safe distance and a safe speed. And I'm still scratching my
that's an
head
out.
What's
trying to
that?
figure out
Right. What is-
when is anything ever going on that you can't give someone 3 feet between your vehicle
Sure.
and their handlebar? I don't understand that.
Yeah, that's the. Well, I tried not to hit him.
And when we were trying to get this law passed, the 5-foot passed in the Senate the previous legislative session, and we had the votes in the House, and the House Transportation Committee is where it got hung up, and they kept giving us these variations of, well, it's 3 feet unless the person's in a bicycle lane, then it doesn't need to be 3 feet, and we're all looking at each other
Wow.
saying, so what is it if someone's in a bicycle lane? 3 inches, 2 inches?
Where, what's safe, right.
And we just kept getting stories about
That would just force you farther to the right of the bicycle lane.
Right,
It's the
right.
space that's already yours.
right. And so, it was a compromise piece of legislation. It was the best that we can do. I think that we were fortunate to get something
Sure.
Yeah.
because
From nothing. It's better.
something is better than
better
nothing.
half
But
a cookie
I
than
still
no
think
cookie.
we have
Right.
one of the weakest passing laws in the country.
Are there efforts to revisit this, or
I think it'll be revisited, but I think it's going to be some time because the legislature is going to say we just did this. So, maybe not this legislative session, but maybe next legislative session come back. And legislative sessions in Michigan last for 2 years. So let's give this a couple of years, and then I do think we should come back and try and make it really a meaningful or
And I think it got a lot of boost, unfortunately, by the loss of lives in accidents. That highlighted the need for something to be...
The Kalamazoo accident, I think we all know where, was it 5 people lost their lives and 4 people were injured?
Yeah,
Correct,
prior to that
totally,
tragedy, we had no traction. We were proposing laws, and they were going nowhere. And, if there was one good thing that came of that, it was that it opened a lot of people's eyes.
Sure.
And a lot of senators and state representatives that we had met who were kind of rolling their eyes when they were meeting with us were all of a sudden saying, I want to be your champion. I want to introduce something. And they were the ones that advanced the safe passing law, the driver's education law, and then even a law that said, I don't know if you're aware of this, but a lot of people who were driving up toward Traverse City were getting ticketed because their bikes blocked their license plate.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
have a tray rack myself, so I was excited to find out that
It's not
nonsense
breaking the
guy,
law, right.
I can't get flicked for having my bike on my bike rack.
right, or a trailer hitch or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that was...
With a lot of these rules, there's a lot of the laws. There's kind of this push-pull between, a lot. So, with the obstructed license plate, cyclists could be on the same page with civil rights groups. But a lot of these laws, the opposition comes from civil rights groups who are going to say, hey, for example, the League of Michigan Bicyclists, there was a law, and word is it's going to be reintroduced. It actually passed, but Governor Snyder never signed it, to allow tinted windows. Now, as cyclists, we like when people don't have tinted windows.
So we can see through and see if you're in the car.
We want to see that eye contact before we
pull. Get hit.
Right. But a lot of civil rights advocates say, and I'm a cooperating lawyer with the ACLU. I get this. I'm sympathetic to it. Tinted windows. That's a profiling violation. That's not. And so. There's this push-pull, so we want to appreciate people's civil rights and respect people's civil rights, but as cyclists,
safety is a concern.
I want to be safe.
Sure.
Yes. Speaking of safety, I don't know, it might be a little off topic, but as cyclists, you occasionally run into the opposite way rider,
Yeah, I ran into one today down here, yeah.
Can you at least educate some folks on, we're not supposed to be doing that,
Just
correct?
put it in the air, just so they can at least hear it from somebody.
Please ride on the right side of the road. Even if you're in a bike lane, be on the right side of the road, not the left side of the road. I made a right-hand turn onto Trumbull today, and there was someone coming down the bike lane the wrong direction, and it was almost a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
When I was young, they used to tell people to ride that way so you could see the cars.
Right.
But,
no.
Those people, most of those people don't ride anymore. I mean, I'm old,
It has been a tradition, for lack of better words, that's been transferred down
we've
to
we've flipped sides of
But
the
it needs to
road
be,
for older people.
Right,
But
yeah.
everybody, Bobby's age, y'all learn to ride on the right side of the road.
Yeah.
Ride on the right side and walk
on the
against
left.
traffic.
Yep.
And the law is that you have to ride with traffic.
Yes.
And that you should walk against traffic.
Okay.
So you're not breaking the law if you walk with traffic, but it's preferred that you do. It's preferred you be on the sidewalk if you're walking.
Yeah, I mean, the physics makes sense. I mean, it's better to get, if you're going to get hit, if you're doing 20 and the car's doing 40, it's a lot less impactful than you're doing 20 into a 40-mile-an-hour oncoming car.
Right, yep.
I didn't get great grades, but I can imagine that happening and one being worse than the other.
Yes.
So, Bryan, what are you into now? What's coming next from Bike Law? What are you...
Well, my goal is to have nothing coming next with Bike Law and to really... The best result would be that people don't need me.
Okay.
And so that's the ultimate goal. It's probably an unrealistic goal. But in terms of, what I'd like to do kind of from an advocacy standpoint is I'd really like to work on distracted driving. And Bruno mentioned we need less distracted drivers. I mean, to me, that is the most important thing. And you're not only helping cyclists, you're helping everybody. People just need to pay attention and realize the damage they can do.
Focus on what you're doing.
Yes.
If you're driving, focus on driving.
Do that.
Just do that
Do
first.
that. That's enough.
Right.
Until the robots take over your driving. Pay attention.
And it really cuts across every demographic of society. You see old people driving, and they're looking. It's not just kids. Everyone thinks it's the kids, but it's 50s, 60s. They're looking at their phones and they know it's wrong. But because they're looking, they don't want to make eye contact.
You look in the rearview mirror and they're looking down.
Yep.
Like,
you know what's going on.
Let me make a decision about how to get around this car as quickly as possible.
So people know it's wrong, but they're still doing it, and so that's where I'd really like to see the changes take place from a legislative standpoint.
Sure. And that's something we could all hopefully look forward.
Yeah, the whole transportation community would benefit from that.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
That's not just bike centric.
Yeah.
So if in the event there is a situation where someone needs your help and your services, please let us know how to get a hold of you and how that will transpire between...
Sure. The easiest way to reach me is just to email me at Bryan, Bryan, at bikelaw.com. You can also contact me at 866-758-0031.
That's excellent.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you have any difficulties out there, you find yourself in the tracks, get caught up in the tracks.
Tracks, yeah.
Yeah,
tracks are nasty.
the
90
Q-line
degrees.
tracks.
Yeah. Q-line, I'm sure, is taken down a chair of people, right?
Yeah.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
But feel free. People email me with questions, and I'm busy, but I try to respond to everyone. Mm-hmm. If it's something that needs immediate attention, I'll get to it. If it's just a question about, I'm wondering how to deal with this situation, I'll get to it. Just be patient. Give me a couple days.
We just really appreciate that there's advocacy in so many ways, with advocacy to access, like with the greenways, and legal advocacy for real change, legal change in the state. I just really feel better every time we do a show. I feel better about the direction and the closeness the community is creating. So,
all right. Well, Bryan, before we let you go, thanks for your time.
Sure.
But if you listened, you're well aware that we've got a little hot seat segment where we ask 5 questions that help us know a little bit more about you, as well as our listeners to get an idea where you're coming from. So if you are ready?
I'm ready.
All right. If you would, describe your favorite bike, either your first bike or your first favorite bike. How's that?
All right, so I've actually got 2 first bikes, and I think this is a lesson that carries through, which is support your local bike shop.
Yes.
So my first bike, I remember my father assembling after it was delivered from some mail order place, probably Sears, right? Mm-hmm. And it didn't fit, and it was a banana seat. It was red. It looked cool. It didn't work. And so we went up to the corner, which was a place called, I think, Olympic Schwinn on Coolidge, south of 9 Mile Road.
Yeah.
And we got this little green Schwinn, and it was perfect. And it got me riding on 2 wheels.
Right behind the Dexter Davis and Coney Island.
Right, yeah,
exactly.
Davis and Coney Island, and then, before that would have been Big Wheels, I suppose, which were awesome.
Right.
But I remember, that was, and ever since then, it's been at the local bike shop for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Describe your favorite ride, location, event.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of favorite rides, but there's one that really stands out in my mind. Every year, my friend Wade and I, we do this ride. It may be 3, 4, 5 days, but we ride from some location across the state of Michigan. We cover as much ground as we can.
We just recently had one a month ago.
We had a tough one this year. It was cold and rainy, but the year before this one, we rode from Leland to Lansing. And we did it in 3 days. It was about 120 miles a day, the route we took.
Wow.
And the first day was on pavement from Leland to Manistee, right down the lakeshore, just beautiful. And the second day was mostly on 2-track snowmobile trails through the Manistee National Forest. and that was hard. And then the third day was from Big Rapids to Lansing on mostly dirt roads. And
you use the same bike for all of them.
Same bike for all of them, an adventure bike.
Yeah,
which,
nice.
It's just, carrying all our gear. Our bikes are loaded up at 45, 50 pounds. And just like, when you ride a bike, you see the world in ways that you wouldn't see it.
Yep.
Whether you're riding through the city or the country, you're just seeing stuff that no one else is going to see.
Don't be afraid to sweat, right?
Yeah,
you really need to go check things out.
Yeah, and you're going to meet people that you never would have met.
Oh, yeah.
We met a lot of beekeepers on that ride.
Right on. So we've mentioned earlier on in the show that you've been an avid cyclist for 25 years, or 30, going on 30. Was there a period before you really became much more active in cycling?
Was there a period where you went away and then came back you found the love again?
Yeah, so most lawyers, you get focused on yourself and your degree and your trade. And so when I was in law school, I got out of shape. And, I probably lost weight, but I gained some inches on my waistline. And so when I got out, I tried to, get into team sports or back into team sports. And I realized my schedule didn't mesh. And my father always rode bikes, and I thought, this is something I can do on my own schedule.
Sure.
And,
And the adventure starts at your front door. Right. You don't have to go to start.
No,
you don't have to drive a half hour to start.
Right. And I could go after work to Belle Isle and just do some loops before I met up with friends, or maybe if I had a little window of time, and all of a sudden. And so I started riding alone, and then I started riding with groups, and then you realize, hey, it's not about the bike, it's about the people.
Sure.
And,
sure.
Yeah, people get that
went
mixed up sometimes.
Yes, they do.
With their $10,000 bikes. Like they're zooming away from the crowd.
Right. You look sweet, but hey, you want to say hi?
Right. You're not
and that's
hanging out.
And the bikes and the fitness thing is all good, but the more you do it, the more you realize it's like any other hobby. Whether you're a hot rodder or you're flying model planes, we're not that much different. Whatever it is that makes you work, it's the camaraderie, it's the people that you interact
people
with,
together.
Right?
Describe your favorite Detroit flavor.
Well, I'm gonna. There's a lot of. I've based on the segment. The common thing is the people and the attitude of the people, and I agree with that. But flavor to me means food.
There's been a
we
few
can work with that.
I've got a favorite chef in Detroit. Her name's Emily Harold. She happens to be my sister, and she's now at Hazel and Ravines out on Maple and Woodward.
Okay.
And if you've ever had her burger, that's my favorite flavor.
Shout out.
It should be.
Right.
It should
May have to take a stop out there.
We might have to.
Nice. And lastly, our last question, one of my favorites, is if you had one dream for Detroit, what would that one dream be?
There's lots of things Detroit that I would dream for, and I have dreamed for a long time with the city. But for me, you see the city making its comeback now, and what I would hope for is that everybody embrace each other, because it's easy to look at people who maybe are in Detroit now and maybe wouldn't have been in Detroit when I, when I was going to law school in Detroit in the early 90s and late 80s, and maybe resent those people. And maybe resent these people who are coming by on these little drinking bars that go by and are clogging up traffic and saying, I used to be able to make it down Michigan Avenue in no time until you showed up. There were some advantages back then. But I would say I want everybody to kind of learn to live together and embrace each other. And to when I say live together, I mean truly live together. I don't want pockets of, Chicago is this vibrant city, but it's pockets.
Yes,
it's pockets of wealthy, it's pockets of poor. I want everybody to embrace each other and live together and appreciate each other.
Right on.
Yeah, that's solid.
That is.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, again, thank you for your valuable time coming to hang out with these hooligans here.
He's talking about you, Bobby.
Hey, Bike Law, we got to let the people know.
Bike Law.
Right. I hope everyone.
I got a new lawyer.
Right. I hope everyone looks for their handbook. Pick up the handbook in full size or in pocket version.
Oh, yeah, they got
And really invest some time into knowing the actual laws of the road.
Right, become an informed cyclist.
Exactly,
You know, don't just be out there wilding out. I mean, you can wild out, but at least be informed.
Know when you're breaking the law.
Know when you're breaking the law.
Or trying to be fancy.
Right, don't fancy. Again, Bryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Henry, Bruno, Bobby. It's been great to be here.
Thank you, Bryan.
Really appreciate it. As you all know, we are about the love, benefits, art, culture, food, and the people we meet on bikes from the Detroit area and beyond. Detroit Bicycle, y'all. Thanks for listening.